The alarms went off before I even understood what I was hearing. Red light spread across the walls of the station like spilled paint, and my cart nearly tipped over as I turned to look down the long hallway of Ward 7. A ship had been hit outside the station, and now the wounded were coming in fast, faster than anyone was ready for. I am Oliver, and I am not a soldier. I am not a doctor. I clean floors on this station, a quiet place built so that different species from across the stars can bring their injured for care, without fighting each other inside its walls. That night, the peace of that place cracked open in seconds. The wounded were Skarn, a tall insect-like people, with hard blue shells and quick clicking voices. Most of them were young, barely past their early years, still soldiers by their laws but children by any fair measure. Their shells were still soft in places, not fully hardened, and that made their injuries far more serious than they looked. The station's main healing machine, the one that was supposed to guide every doctor and treat every wound, had failed only minutes before the ship arrived. A power surge had burned through its systems, and now it moved too slowly to help anyone in time. The only two Skarn doctors who had come with the wounded were shaking, one of them holding an arm that no longer worked the way it should. The human doctors were still far away, sleeping in another part of the station, because station law said no human could treat a Skarn patient without a translator present. That law existed for a good reason, but tonight, there was no time to wait for it. I heard a young voice trying to speak, and I turned to see a girl, though I am not certain that is the right word for her kind, struggling to remove the armor pressing against her chest. Her hands would not stop shaking. She could not release the clasp, and with every second, the pressure on her side grew worse. I do not know why I moved first. Maybe because no one else was standing close enough. Maybe because I had spent years learning small things about the people I worked around. Not because anyone told me to, but because I did not like cleaning up after events I did not understand. I had read, months earlier, that Skarn blood reacts safely to a certain kind of metal mesh, the same kind used to clean scorch marks off the outer walls of ships. It was sitting right there, in my cart, meant for polishing metal, not for saving lives. I grabbed it anyway. I helped her out of the broken armor first, careful not to press where the shell had cracked. Then I packed the wound with the metal mesh, tightly enough to slow the bleeding, but not so tight that it would stop blood from moving through the tissue nearby. She looked at me with wide, dark eyes, confused but calmer, now that the pressure had eased. I moved to the next patient before I could think too hard about what I had just done. A boy near the far wall had a broken jaw, unable to speak, blood at the edge of his mouth. I had nothing meant for that kind of injury, only a roll of tape meant for small human cuts. It held his jaw steady enough to stop the worst of the damage, until real help could arrive. I moved from bed to bed, following instructions shouted at me in broken trade language by the injured doctor with the useless arm, doing whatever small thing I could to slow the damage, until the real doctors reached the ward. By the time the human surgeons arrived, out of breath and stunned by what they saw, 9 patients had already been stabilized. None of them died that night, and none of them have died since. I did not think much of it. I put my cart back in its place and returned to my work, because that is what I always do. 3 days later, something changed the quiet rhythm of the station completely. I felt her before I saw her. The air in the hallway seemed to grow still, heavier somehow, as every Skarn soldier nearby straightened without being told to. Mother Euthera, the queen of the Skarn people, had come to see her injured children. She was not larger than the others in size, but there was something about the way she moved that made the whole hallway feel smaller around her. She walked to each injured soldier, touching their foreheads gently, speaking words in an old language that the station translators did not even try to explain to the rest of us. It did not feel like something meant for outsiders to understand. Then she reached the girl whose armor I had removed 3 nights before. The girl said something quietly, glancing toward the hallway where I stood with my cart, unsure whether I should even be there. She lifted a hand and pointed toward me. Mother Euthera turned. I wanted to believe I stood calm and steady, but the truth is, my hands went cold, and my mind raced through every story I had heard about what a queen could do if she were displeased. Before I could decide whether to step back or bow, she crossed the floor and stopped close enough that I could see my own reflection in her dark, glassy eyes. They tell me, she said, her voice smooth and unhurried, that a human closed my daughter's wound using a tool meant for cleaning metal. Copper mesh, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. It works the same way as what your doctors use. I read about it once, a long time ago. You read about it, she repeated, as if testing the words. I like understanding what I clean up after, I said. It felt wrong not knowing why people were hurting. She studied me for a long moment, long enough that I could hear my own heartbeat clearly. Then she lifted one of her long limbs, slowly, carefully, and placed it gently on my shoulder. I knew enough to understand that her people rarely touched anyone outside their own kind. It was not something done lightly. There is a rule on this station, she said, that your healers may not treat my people without someone present who understands both our words. Do you know why that rule exists? No, I admitted. Because many years ago, a human healer tried to help one of ours without understanding enough about our bodies, and a soldier who might have lived did not survive. That rule was written from grief, and grief creates careful rules. Her voice lowered slightly. You broke that rule. I did not know about the rule, I said honestly. I only saw someone hurt, and I had something in my cart that could help. No, she said again, calm but firm. You broke that rule long before tonight, the day you first chose to learn how my people's bodies work, though no one asked you to. The moment you broke it happened quietly, long before there was any blood to stop. Tonight was simply when it was finally needed. I did not know how to answer that. No one had ever spoken to me as if a small choice from long ago mattered at all. She straightened, and the whole ward seemed to straighten with her, as though her presence alone commanded quiet respect from everyone nearby. I came here to comfort children who were hurt by strangers, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the ward now, loud enough for every human and scarn nearby to hear. Instead, I find that a stranger was already comforting them, using the only knowledge he had, long before he was given permission to use it. She looked at me again. My people have a word for someone who helps before being asked, and continues helping even after being told it is against the rules. There is no simple way to say it in your language. The closest word your people use might be family. I did not know what to do with my hands, and even now, thinking back on that moment, I still do not know. Let it be recorded, she said, turning to the nearby station physician, who looked as though she wished to be anywhere else, that this human may enter this ward whenever he wishes, and bring whatever tools he believes may help. Let it also be recorded that the rule written from grief still stands, but a second rule, written from gratitude, will now stand beside it. Grief does not need to be erased to be answered. It only needs company. Before she left, she looked at me one final time. What is your name? She asked. I told her. That is a small name, she said quietly, for someone who did something so large. Then, gentler than I expected from someone with such quiet power, she added, Thank you for learning things no one asked you to learn. Then she returned to her children, and I returned to my cart, because Ward 9 still needed cleaning, and even on the day a queen called me family, some things still needed to be done. I finished my shift that night, just as I always do.